Shibidoo wop, gentle listeners. Welcome back to the podcast. This is your host, your gentle host, Pat Flynn. And I have a very gentle guest for all my gentle listeners today. And this gentle guest is none other than the Robitussin sipping Hebrew hammer,
Wish I had a
Aleks
bottle with
Salkin.
me right now.
It's a little early to get started, but we're here again with the man himself, Aleks Salkin. And I hope you are ready to kickstart your kettlebell and bodyweight training journey, your fitness adventure. And Aleks is the guy who is well known for his mixed modality approach of synthesizing sort of the best of what the kettlebell has to offer with the best of what your own fragile and weak body has to offer to make it strong and resilient and lean. Combining these modalities. Aleks, welcome to the show. Good to see you.
Thank you for having me.
Yes. So we just had a conversation on your podcast, and it was, I don't know, one of the bottom 3 conversations I've ever had in my life.
Well, but I would say bottom 3 of the week for sure, but of life, I mean, if I guess I didn't realize it sunk that low, but I think people should listen to it to make that determination themselves.
Yeah, I re-aired it on my podcast so they can take some time off purgatory with that. Now, today we're going to build on that conversation a little bit, and you've got a new, soon-to-be critically acclaimed ebook coming out called "The Introduction to Kettlebells and Bodyweight," something or other. I forget what we'll talk about at the end. But I wrote the foreword to this ebook, so it's going to be. It's going to be good. It's going to be worth. That's going to be worth the price of admission alone. So
it's going to be exquisite.
Yeah. And Aleks wasn't at all disappointed with what I gave him for that forward. So just let that be known. And we'll talk about that later. But for now, good sir, where do we begin? And why? Well, first off, why don't you make the case for kettlebells and calisthenics? Because remind me of your history. How did you start training? Did you start with kettlebells? Did you start with body weight? Would you start with both? What's the origin story? I gave a bit of my origin story on your podcast. Why don't you give yours here? Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I mean, when it comes to strength training, I mean, if you want to go like really, really back into the primordial beginning days, long before I was even the Hebrew hammer, I had been interested in getting stronger for a very long time because I grew up kind of, scrawny and unathletic and what have you, very uncoordinated. And it wasn't until I discovered the kettlebell that I felt like I really had like a raison d'etre, as it were. But prior to that, I did what a lot of other people did, and we had some exercise equipment at home, so I would try to use that. I started doing Muay Thai when I was 19.
And did your mom ever have like the 8-minute abs tape lying around? Like mine did.
No, actually, they didn't have a lot of that, like the as seen on TV sort of a really but we do have, or my in the basement still, my parents' house is a like a really old, it's like a DP exercise machine. It's like, I mean, seriously, like I've told my dad, you could probably sell that and make money off of it because it's like an antique practically.
Mm-hmm. So I don't even know what that is.
No, I mean, if you saw it, you'd be like, okay, yeah, this is like, the early 70s, at home gym sort of a thing. It's quite a sight to behold. There's not and it comes with like a barbell. It's not a standard Olympic bar. It's just like a metal bar. And then the plates are like, I'm pretty sure cement or maybe sand filled. And it's like a plastic exterior. And like the heaviest they have is like, I think 10 pounds. So it's like either 10, 5, or 2.5 pounds. Those are your options, and you wouldn't even be able to put enough onto the bar to actually make it heavy. Like it's basically that kind of piece of equipment. And so I would train with that, and they had like a big circuit training machine as well. And then eventually I discovered Muay Thai, and I was very interested in that, and so I would use the gym there. And I had a friend who was getting into bodybuilding, and so he was showing me how to do the basic bodybuilding moves. And of course it was like 6 different curls and like 12 different chest exercises and something for the triceps, nothing for the legs. My rationale was I'm kicking enough, then I'm probably working my legs just fine. I had a lot to learn. But a couple years after that, a friend of mine, in fact it'd been about 14 years ago this month, I think, a friend of mine introduced me to the kettlebell.
Wow.
And
it was like
Yeah, thank you very much. I really wish I could remember the exact day. And this was back in the time when you didn't post like every nuance of your life on Facebook. So I can't go through the memories, that I've got racked up on Facebook to find the exact date. But it was either late March or early April of 2008. And he showed me how to do a couple things with the kettlebell. I did a terrible job. I have no doubt, like awful looking swings, terrible. Yeah, exactly. Just like my coach used to say I did like the drinking bird swing. Like it just didn't bend the knees at all. Like I just like bent at the hips, and it was a sight to behold, I'm sure. But I really got into kettlebell training, and I got into it very strongly. I didn't do a lot in terms of body weight training because I just, periodically I would do some push-ups or I'd try to do some pull-ups, but it wasn't really until, by the way, and it wasn't because I didn't think body weight training was good. I just didn't know what to do. I was like, either doing a program my coach had written for me, or I was doing something out of a book or what have you. And it wasn't until around 2011 I decided I was finally going to try to learn a one-arm push-up. And up to that point, I had the Naked Warrior by Pavel.
Right.
And I would try to do the things that I saw in the book. Pistol squats were not that difficult for me, but one-arm push-ups were like an impossibility. So then I got the DVD and I watched it. Within maybe like 10 or 15 minutes, there was like one thing.
I didn't even know there was a DVD. I had the book, but I was unaware of the DVD.
Yeah, there was a DVD. The DVD turned out to be very, very useful. And I wish, that I had just broken down 3 years prior and just bought it. And I didn't. So when I did finally get it and I watched it and I did this one tweak to my technique, I was able to do a one-arm push-up. And from there, I was obsessed with bodyweight training. And so 2011-ish was about the time my bodyweight obsession kicked off. And from there, there wasn't really, now there's like an abundance of information on how to kind of combine.
Let me ask you this. Here's a really important question, Aleks, right? To gain to gain envious eyes, do you think bodyweight exercises have the best sort of effort to coolness ratio in the gym? You see what I'm saying? Like, there's a lot of bodyweight exercises that people seem like the common folk, right? Seem to be very impressed by, that they're not easy to do, but they're also not like the most difficult thing in the world to do either. Like if you do a muscle up, people they're like, oh, that's super sweet. It's not that hard, right?
Yeah.
Same thing with a one-arm push-up. You do a good one-arm push-up, people are pretty impressed. And it's not that hard. In fact, like the heavy back squats that people work up to in gym are probably, all things considered, more difficult to get to that level than a one-arm push-up. But most people kind of could care less. You know what I mean? So it's like, if your goal is just to catch people's eyes, which is Alex's goal. Do you think that there's a good investment strategy here, Aleks? That's what I'm asking.
I do think so, actually, because, I have a great story about this. This is back a couple years ago at the Dragon Gym. We were working out. Well, I think you might have been there. I don't really recall specifically, but I remember I was working out there, and there were a couple of other dudes who were there, including one quite a well-built guy, like very muscular. And you would recognize the name if I told you. Just somebody who would train there periodically, and I was doing handstands, kind of off to the side. Well, this guy was doing incline presses, with pair of 75-pound dumbbells or something like that, we're talking like a big, strong dude. And then, I came down from a freestanding handstand, and he's like, man, that is so impressive. And, I was like, oh, thanks. I appreciate it. And he's like, it's one thing to lift heavy weights, because anybody can do that. He's like, but, if you see somebody doing handstands and some of this other body weight stuff, it's like, they've got some real skills. So this is coming from somebody who is not a novice at all. This is a very, very strong dude. And again, very muscular, very well built, he had a very impressive physique. But I think that you're right. The coolness factor of calisthenics movements, even though they may not be that difficult, I think what really impresses people is how rare they are. So it's like,
that's it.
Rarity. Yeah, we could say the same thing about certain, let's say a heavy barbell military press. That's also very impressive, and you don't see it all that often in a commercial gym. But without question, if you see somebody do, a muscle up, especially one where they're not kicking and flailing their legs all over the place, but like just a solid muscle up, one arm push up, pistol squat. It really catches
right. Think about that. This should be a question for the audience. People can let us know in the comments if you think we're right on this, but take a one arm chin up versus a 3 times body weight deadlift. What are most people going to think is cooler? Now, I will tell you, for me, it was easier to get the body weight exercise than the barbell exercise at that level of intensity.
Mm-hmm.
And my thought, and now that's, that might just play to my structure, right? I tend to naturally be very strong at upper body pulling. I'm a relatively lean dude. So, maybe I'm just sort of more naturally inclined to be better at that type of thing. But my thought is that a lot of people, like they'll see like a 3 times body weight deadlift. They're like, oh, that's interesting. But you see somebody like pull off a one arm chin up, they're like, kind of, it's like, whoa, what that, right?
Yeah.
But for me, anyways, actually getting the calisthenic exercise was less difficult than the barbell exercise.
Yeah,
you agree with this?
Oh, totally. I mean,
and not to say that it's easy.
No.
And in fact, the one arm chin up was very difficult, and I've stopped doing them because it gave me elbow issues, which I talked about before. But it was easier, even both very difficult, but easier. If that makes sense.
Yeah. No, it makes sense too, because the way I've known you for many years, and you've always been somebody who's maintained a lean physique and body weight, probably around like 160-ish pounds,
right.
Something like that. And physique like that really does favor calisthenics exercises. Likewise, really big dudes. This is the thing, actually, I think if you see a really big dude lifting really heavy weights, you're like, well, yeah, of course, the guy's massive,
Mm-hmm.
And to some degree, I still think that if you see a small guy doing something like one arm chin ups, it's still incredibly impressive, but it's easier to comprehend. What I think is especially impressive is when you see a small guy lifting something really heavy, whether it's a heavy kettlebell, heavy barbell, or if you see a really big guy doing some
huge
cool body weight
brute
stuff.
just doing
Totally. Yeah. I mean, but yeah, I think no matter what, if you're in a gym and you see somebody do a one arm pull up, you're like, they're like this guy's skill transcends just the ability to move something heavy, because I think people instinctively understand that your ability to move your body weight through free space in very difficult ways has a certain, it's beyond a cool factor. It's like, it really shows a level of mastery, because I think people in general feel like, okay, lifting weights doesn't really require that much skill. And it's obviously not entirely true, but I would say that there are calisthenics feats like one arm chin up, like you mentioned, front and back levers, planches, things like that.
Just basic handstands.
Even basic handstands. Yeah. Like there's an element to it that is, you cannot fake. You can't hit, like, with a deadlift, you can hitch and you can kind of wiggle and get your way up to the top, and may not count in a powerlifting competition, but people will be like, okay, he lifted it. There's just no way to do that with calisthenic stuff. And I think doing stuff that looks like it's defying gravity with your own body. Yeah. It's just, I think it really captivates a lot of people.
You ever hear that song from, what was that musical that was big a long time ago? Defying Gravity was like the big song from it. It was like the play on The Wizard of Oz. What am I thinking of? Help me.
I vaguely know what you're talking about. I can't think of it either.
What was that musical? Somebody's got to know. Defying Gravity. Every time somebody says Defying Gravity, that song automatically starts playing in my head. Yeah. Or whatever. The listeners can tell us in the comments. So obviously, all right, we're kind of way downstream here because we're talking about one arm chin ups, which is a advanced move, and it's a move that I generally don't even recommend people do. Right, for various reasons. It's one of those things where I just think it's like it'll catch people's attention, but I think the risk to return ratio isn't great there, because for my experience with pursuing the one arm chin up, it didn't really help anything else, and it gave me like pretty nasty elbow tendonitis and all this other stuff. So that's one of those exercises where I'm like, okay, been there, done that. Don't really need to do that anymore. Almost never program it.
Yeah.
So why don't we back up and go and talk about some more appropriate aspects of calisthenics training, and also like less intimidating, right? If people think we're starting with one arm chin ups, they're just not even going to bother. So how do you see calisthenics in a basic way complementing kettlebells? And I think maybe we should start by just being honest that kettlebells are a great comprehensive tool, but they're not, they don't cover absolutely everything, right? Kettlebell training does leave some things either completely unattended or just doesn't give certain aspects as much attention as they deserve. So start us there, Aleks, and walk us through.
Yeah, first of all, I think that can be said about pretty much any implement, because no implement can be everything to everyone. And you can try to make it everything to everyone, but the reality is that, like you pointed out, kettlebells are just better for certain things. I would say barbells are better for certain things. Machines have, and dumbbells and calisthenics, they all have like what Dan John likes to call killer apps, like certain things that they can do that they're really at the top of the food chain for doing. So I think with kettlebells, the perfect example would be repetition ballistic lifts. You really just can't do that with anything else. And the value
like swings and snatches and stuff like
exactly,
that. Right?
Swings, clean snatches. I mean, you can try it with a dumbbell, but it's just not the same. And you can't really do it for as many repetitions effectively, in my opinion. And, with a barbell, there's just no better way to go heavy with some really big major compound movements. I would say particularly for lower body exercises, there's just no way to build more strength in the lower body specifically, but also to a certain degree with the upper body with a barbell. With calisthenics, I think one of the reasons why it works so well with the kettlebells is because, the kettlebell in essence is, if you break it down to like the most basic component, is the ability to move sort of an awkward and unwieldy object through free space using, some principles of strength. And then calisthenics, on the other hand, is learning how to move your body against gravity through free space. So no matter what, you're going to have the element of gravity with in both of these. But if we want to talk about, I almost hesitate to use the word, but like functional training, what can be more functional than moving odd objects through free space and moving your body through free space?
I was going to say, is your body an odd object?
Well, it depends on, I guess on your diet and how much you've been, how properly you've been eating. It could be a very odd looking object, we've all seen it. And in case anyone's wondering, yes, I am shaming you if you look different from me.
Aleks will do that.
Yes, exactly. I'm a terrible, terrible person. I like to do stuff like that. But no, on a more serious note, I do think that's why. It's because they complement each other very well, because one of them is basically learning how to move an odd object through free space, an external object, and the other one is learning how to commandeer your body through free space. And these are both things that, to some degree or another, you're going to need to do every day. And so the better you are at both of these things, the easier it is to lay claim to having real world strength and just generally being a more quote unquote functional individual, as it were.
Yeah. And just to give people ideas, like where are some like just obvious gaps in kettlebell training? And not even talking about like where some tools might be better, right? Like I agree when it comes to like, think about grinding lower body hinging stuff. Kettlebell's kind of limited there. I mean, even if you get two really heavy kettlebells, you're just not going to really match what the barbell can do in terms of deadlifts. Now, if you start doing the ballistics, totally different story. But yeah, kettlebells are just sort of inherently limited in like two things immediately. One is vertical pulling, right? You can of course, do plenty of horizontal pulling with kettlebell, which is great and highly recommended. But the vertical pulling, like pull-ups and stuff like that. And yeah, tying a kettlebell around your waist doesn't really count. That's not like technically a kettlebell exercise, right? You can tie anything around your waist, including a cat. But there's also the feet and ankles. They often get overlooked. So important, right? So, we often say there's no wrists in kettlebell training, but it often seems like there's very little ankles or no ankles in kettlebell training either, which is cool and useful. But we want to make sure that we are training our wrists, our hands, our feet, our ankles as well. And, simple, calisthenic movements there can go a long way in filling some pretty obvious gaps. So let's turn now, Aleks, to the practical side. When you're starting somebody out and you're trying to kind of get the best of both worlds, or the both of best worlds, however you want to put it, both are fine. Where do you start? What are some of the principles that you like people to think about? And maybe you could give us maybe a few sample routines before we talk about your very soon to be critically acclaimed ebook coming up.
Yeah, well, first thing is I would say a lot of people, I don't know if this is true around the board, but a lot of people that I've encountered, it depends on their ambition level, but a lot of times people see a cool video or something like that, and they're like, I want to learn how to do the kettlebell snatch. And it's like, okay, well, before I can show you how to do the kettlebell snatch, I need to show you how to do the I need to see that you can actually hinge properly. It reminds me of the story that I heard about. There was a guy, you probably remember him, like he had infomercials. His name was Kevin Trudeau, and it was like, you know,
The
he had the
secrets they don't want you to know.
exactly
Yeah, man.
they don't want you to know.
Isn't he in jail, or didn't he
Yeah,
go to
he's in
jail?
jail for
Yeah.
sure. So I'm not telling.
Mentor of yours, right?
Not quite. No. In fact, I heard this story from somebody who I would consider a mentor who is not in jail. So I just want to be very
All
clear.
my mentors are in jail.
Yeah, exactly. That'd be a great name for like an article.
Like I'd read that article. Like I just have to know what's going on here right now.
Exactly. But when he was young, evidently he went to a taekwondo studio or kung fu or something like that, and he told the instructor, he said, I want to be able to do really cool stuff. I want to be able to do flashy, you know, awesome things. And the instructor's like, what? You mean like this? And he walked him over to a candle, and he punched so fast that the air blew the candle out. And he said, yeah, I want to be able to do that. He goes, okay, well, first I have to teach you how to punch. And so it is with people in the world of kettlebell. I think in particular with bodyweight training, but also to a great degree kettlebell training. A lot of times people will reach out to me and they'll say, hey, well, I want to be able to do, you know, one arm push-ups. And I'll ask, well, how many regular push-ups can you do? Like, I can do like 10. Like, well, I would say you'd probably want to get to at least a minimum of like 30 before you even think about it, because you need to have a good, strong base. And a lot of people don't like to hear it because it's not flashy and ninja, and, you know, it's not punching and knocking a candle out with just the wind of your fist, you know. So a lot of times people kind of shy away from it, and then they end up going toward the difficult, cool, flashy looking stuff, and they're really just not ready for it. So when somebody wants to start off with kettlebells and calisthenics, the thing that's actually going to get them to their goals fastest is mastering the basics. And this isn't anything new. You know, this is as fundamental as it comes. But where I would start people off first and foremost, if we want to talk about principles, is that you have to know how to move properly. A great many people might make the shape of an exercise. You can tell like what their intention is, but if you know the joints and the muscles and everything that's supposed to be assisting with that movement doesn't work properly, you need to focus on that first. The other thing is that you have to be able to recruit all the muscles in your body at once. So you have to learn how to build tension, to maintain it, to apply it to a variety of things, and you have to also know when to turn it off. I mean, this is especially important, as you know, in ballistic drills, because a lot of times you'll see people the first time they're attempting a ballistic drill, just overly tense. You know, they're moving too slowly. They're not breathing, things like that. And so as fundamental and as basic as that all seems, it's a great many people need to really focus on that first and foremost. And then the results really start pouring in. And so it's like the old saying that Abraham Lincoln used to say, like, if I had 2 hours to chop down a tree, I'd spend the first hour and a half sharpening the axe. And a lot of people think that's boring, but it's a lot cooler to knock down a tree in maybe half an hour as opposed to just whittling away for 3 hours. And unfortunately, that's what a lot of people do, is they're not really prepared. So they stumble and they struggle, and they don't really make that much progress. And then it just feels like, you know what, maybe I'm not cut out for this. Reality is again, if you get you improve your movement, so you have some idea of what your body's supposed to be doing. You learn how to apply some of the internal processes in your body that the best will just do naturally, like tensing up in an appropriate amount prior to lifting a weight, and then learning how to move your body through certain specific movement patterns that you can build off of. In a very short amount of time, you can start doing very cool stuff. But it's those initial things that you have to learn how to fall in love with that are really going to take you the farthest.
So what do you think are some Dan, John, and I often talk about kind of like floor and ceiling in training programs. Like, hey, here's a floor, here's sort of a baseline minimum. If you're not here, let's get here quick, right? Like, let's not fall below the floor in terms of general physical competency, right? And then there's ceilings, and ceilings could be like, yeah, strong enough is strong enough. Like if you hit this point, it's probably time to move on and pursue other goals or do some new interesting variations, stuff like that. When it comes to your approach to kettlebell and calisthenics, when we're thinking about a floor, and gentle listeners understand that a floor is never going to be something exciting, right? It's just like kind of the bare minimum. What do you think are some of the exercises that people should have under their belt, and what sort of intensity should they be able to perform them at?
Well, I think for kettlebell training in particular, if we want to look at, we can look at the floor in multiple different ways. So it could be number of reps with a particular exercise, but I want to focus first on the exercises that you should be focusing on first and foremost. And without question, that would be swing, goblet squat, and military press. I think those three. Now there are obviously a lot of others that I would.
I like this. Let's do 3 and 3. Let's go 3 with kettlebells, 3 with bodyweight.
Yeah,
this will help. This will help the unwashed, gentle listener focus.
Exactly. And then the 3 with the body weight, I would say push up, body weight row, and leg raise on the floor.
Now explain the complementarity there, because I like where you're going with it.
Yeah. Now, first and foremost, let's go with the kettlebell stuff first. Now, I know that there are probably going to be people who are like, well, why aren't you saying Turkish get up?
I can already hear the comment section now, Aleks.
They're probably screaming with hatred.
This idiot,
this heretic
podcast.
How very dare he? Well, I'll
unsubscribe.
Please, by all means, unsubscribe. Neither Pat nor
from Pat's podcast.
Yeah, from Pat's podcast, not mine. Well, the reason actually comes from some experience that I had when I was working at the Dragon Gym, because, for the longest time I thought, well, yeah, the get up is just fundamental. Like, you have to do that before you press. And then I remember when I was, running orientations for people who wanted to start up with the strong on classes, our approach was to do the squat, swing, and a press. And I remember thinking, like, yeah, but what about the get up? And I was like, all right, well, I'm just going to do what they
I'm not going to question Pat.
Exactly. How could I, like, what sense would that make? But I realized that there's a lot of wisdom in it, because there's a lot of stuff. Now, first of all, the press is way easier. It's basically from here to here. Okay. That's like 2 steps. Turkish get up is like 14. So you tell me what's more beginner and what maybe is a little bit better as an intermediate exercise. A lot of the things that you can tell from a Turkish get up, or ostensibly, like, can the person put their hand over their head safely, et cetera, et cetera. You can tell with a military press, but there's also a way that people can just jump in and start training right out of the gate. And then later they can work on stuff like their ability to roll and lunge and do these transitions and stuff like that. Stuff that I think is obviously going to be important for a Turkish get up. But if you can't do those things, you can't do the get up. So that's why I would put the military press in there. Goblet squat is fundamental for all the reasons everybody who's a regular listener to your podcast probably knows. You need the ability to squat in between your legs. You are probably going to be squatting down more likely with something in front of you than on your back. So barbell squat or back squat is a great exercise, but I think it comes after front squat. So learning how to squat and being able to modulate it to your current levels of mobility and strength and that sort of a thing is hugely important. And then lastly, the swing. I mean, that should be relatively obvious. One of the killer apps of kettlebell training is, number 1, the ability to hinge, and then number 2, the ability to do ballistic quick lifts like swings, cleans, high pulls, snatches, things like that. And if you can't swing well, you're not going to do these other things well either. So you really need to make sure that you've got that down. And then for the body weight side of things, push-ups, fundamental for a lot of reasons. I think a lot of people tend to look at them as just kind of remedial or like a conditioning sort of an exercise, but you can build some really tremendous strength even with very high rep push-ups. Talking about Dan John again, I remember listening to a talk that he was giving on a DVD that I have of his, and he surmises that one of the reasons why so many high school wrestlers who later get into powerlifting end up hitting a 400-pound bench press relatively quickly is because of just how many push-ups they do in practice. It takes a lot of repetitions to get good at something. But what's really important is that if it kind of, let's say, burns it into your nervous system so that you know that movement inside and out, it's very easy to translate it into other things. So whether it be, if you're into martial arts, whether it be a punch, if you really just want to get really good at calisthenics, let's say a one-arm push-up later on down the line, push-ups are really fundamental. And even on a more basic level than that, we know that there is a correlation between one's ability to get up off the ground with minimal to no use of the hands and longevity and likelihood to die of all causes over a course of a however many year period, 5-year period, I think. And while this is typically viewed as something that's more relevant to an older population, I think it's every bit as relevant for young people. And what could be more fundamental than getting up off the ground? Well, that's your push-up right there. You're flat face down on the ground, able to push yourself up. It's going to go a long way. So it has a lot of, let's say again, quote unquote, functional purposes as well. When it comes to the row, I love pull-ups as much as anybody else, but the fact is, most people are not really ready to do all that many pull-ups.
This is true.
They may not have the prerequisite levels of strength, and this is another thing too. Like people, they want to get good at pull-ups, so they're told, well, you're going to have to practice pull-ups. But if you don't have a prerequisite level of strength in your back, in your grip, in your arms, and all sorts of other different in-between places.
You need to sharpen the axe a bit. That's right.
Exactly. And what's more, if you have sensitive shoulders, for instance, rows are excellent because they're one of the few movements that really works your shoulders in kind of a neutral position rather than requiring a lot of internal rotation, which a lot of people have in abundance anyway because they sit kind of hunched over all day. If you're doing a lot of push-ups and military presses and things like that, there's a necessary amount of internal rotation. So it's kind of a nice way of making sure that you're not getting too hunched over, but that you're actually kind of opening yourself back up again.
Now, what are you recommending there for rows? Do you just say get a suspension trainer, use a set of rings, either or is fine?
I would personally recommend rings because if you have a TRX, you can definitely do that. Or
but rings are like $20. Just get the basic like wooden rings on Amazon and be done with it.
First of all, they're cheaper, which is remarkable because considering you can do a lot more with them. One of the issues with the suspension trainers like TRX and stuff like that is that you are somewhat limited in what you can do. I mean,
you can't really do like pull-ups with them, or certainly once you start moving to like if you think about doing muscle ups and stuff like that,
it's not possible. Yeah. And honestly, even like push-ups are really uncomfortable with them, and they're more expensive. So I think gymnastics rings are far better bang for your buck. And and again, like you can later turn that into doing work for pull-ups, dips, push-ups, straight arm scapular strength exercises. So you'll get a lot of mileage out of them. So highly recommend getting a set of rings to do your rows with.
Yeah, excellent. And then leg lifts.
Yeah, I think the great thing about leg raises is that everybody wants a punch-proof set of abs, and I know every time I'm hanging out with Pat, just at random, wham, hit right in the old bread basket. So
I was ready.
I got to be ready, ready for the old black belt Taekwondo punch, right to the old six pack. So that's one of the things. The other one is I think that you're going to have to lift your legs to do a wide variety of things more than you're going to need to crunch yourself off the ground. So while I do think that the sit-ups are great, I don't think they beat leg lifts for a lot of things.
Agreed.
Yeah. And so, and the nice thing too is that leg lifts are things that have a great carryover into your swing, for instance, because you've got to keep a nice tight braced stomach at the top of a swing. Likewise with your squats. So, and then, the rows, for instance, can help to improve your military press because it's going to improve your posture. It's going to allow you to use more of that support musculature when you're pressing the weight overhead. Push-ups are going to do the same thing. They're going to help to strengthen your pressing muscles. So the nice thing is that all these things work together to help get you stronger in a wide variety of ways. And, we could toss in lots of other exercises, but in terms of like an absolute floor,
stay focused.
Exactly. These three things, you start off with these, you do these for a good couple of weeks, get good enough, then you can kind of start to experiment on maybe your in-between days with doing some different variations and some different exercises as well.
Yeah. Okay. So right now, Aleks, I feel like we got a 2-star podcast, but I want a 5-star podcast. Like you've done okay. It's not great, but you done.
Not my best work.
And my unwashed, gentle listeners, they're very demanding, Aleks. So the next question that's naturally going to manifest in their consciousness is going to be, that sounds great, guy, but how do I put it all together? So Aleks, let us satisfy this demand and help us in a basic, straightforward way. Give us like a week. Give us a week of how you would put these exercises so we get that well-deserved, beautiful, overly fawning 5-star review. Hint, hint, wink, wink. What would a week of incorporating these exercises in a simple, straightforward, minimalist plan of attack look like? How would you put these things together, and what would you prescribe? Go.
What I would say is rotate the exercises. You have a lot of options, obviously. So just
we have 6 exercises we're working with it.
Exactly.
Yep. Mm-hmm.
So a good approach would be something like this. So let's say you alternate your lower body and upper body exercises. So for instance, one day you might do swings, another day you might do squats, one day you might do presses, another day you might do push-ups. I think with things like rows and leg raises, you can do those every day because, as I mentioned earlier, you know, they're going to have a nice impact on all sorts of different things. So I think working on the midsection and then working on your back, these are things you don't necessarily have to, number one, you probably haven't spent enough time doing properly anyway. Everybody likes doing stuff for their legs, and well, maybe not the legs, but everybody likes doing stuff for their upper body. So you probably don't need to work a lot of pressing movements as much as you would pulling. So I would say, let's say day one for the upper body, it's going to be military press, row, and then for the lower body, we're going to have swing and leg raises. Okay, so I know that your stomach is really technically in your upper body, but because it has such an impact on the lower body, I like to connect these two things. So let's say that's day A. All right, day B would be push-ups, rows, squats, and leg raises. Okay, so day A is military press and rows and swings and leg raises. All right, and day B once again is push-ups and rows, squats, and leg raises. Mm-hmm. So what you're going to do is you're going to have, let's say, a week or 2-week cycle where it'd be ABA, and then the next week would be BAB. So this is going to allow you to work a little bit more on certain exercises in 1 week, and then back off on others in that week, and then you just flip it the next week. So that way you've got, again, a natural kind of emphasis on different exercises in 1 week, and then a little less emphasis the next week. And Brilliant. Then now you've got these couplets, this military, the upper body combinations and the lower body combinations. So what I would do is if you're a beginner, you're just getting started and you want to get started off on the right foot, the total number of reps that you do.
And even if you're not a beginner, you just want to go back to basics. There's a lot of value. And I do that fairly often myself. It's like, you know what? Just did this phase of crazy nonsense. I'm just going to spend a couple weeks just going back to basics. So yeah, definitely for beginners, but even if you've been in the game a while, there's a lot of value in just having a phase of just back to basics. Highly recommend it. Mm-hmm.
Absolutely. And, I can give you an example of that for myself because for most of this year so far, I was doing primarily bodyweight exercises and especially just the basic stuff like push-ups, rows, leg raises, lunges, things like that. And now I've moved on to a different program, doing a little bit of barbell work a la Mass Made Simple by Dan John. And the back squats are tough. But for example, my legs don't really feel all that beat up when I'm done with the high rep squats. At the end of the
and the other thing I'll say is it doesn't always have to be in relation to your other training, but your life at the time as well. So having these back to basics programs is great for me. If I've just got a big life project going on, like I do right now with trying to finish up 2 books and other stuff, it's sometimes other areas of your life become more intense that it makes sense to not also do the most intense training program of your life at that time too. Because I don't care how disciplined and motivated you are, we all just sort of have limited reserves. And the problem for a lot of people is once life gets more stressful and intense in one area, then they just give up the fitness altogether. Huge mistake. The smarter thing is to have these back to basics programs. I'm not going to be doing anything crazy, but I'm still going to be able to maintain a very robust sense of general fitness because of what Aleks is giving me here. So whoever is listening to this, keep this idea in your back pocket, because even if you're not going to use it right now, this is something that you want to have sort of available to you because life gets busy and this stuff is useful. So yes, continue, Aleks.
Exactly. Yeah. I'll tell you another thing too. People have a tendency, they have kind of a tendency to break their the way that they approach their training is very different than the way they would approach anything else, which I think is a mistake. Because let's say, for example, you know, like things get busy at work. They're not like, well, they're not going to be like, well, I'm either really busy at work or I'm just going to quit my job. Like you would just never do that. But people are like, wow, you know, I'm really busy with everything else, so I'm just going to quit my training. And people need to understand that. And I think this comes from the belief that you have to train hard all the time. Otherwise, your training is not valuable. And as you've said it many times, exercise is cumulative. So if you do just 5 minutes of exercise in a day, let's say it's just 5 minutes of push-ups, resting when you need to, and you do that every day, by the end of the week, let's say you only do it 5 days, you know, that's 25 minutes worth of push-up practice that you've done, or swings, or whatever the exercise might be. That's a lot more than zero. So you're absolutely right. You know, going back to the basics periodically and going to a really simple programming, you know, very direct, very straightforward, not stressing the total number of reps, but rather just focusing on, you know, this is my 10 or 15 minutes to practice. So this is what I'm going to do.
Right.
It goes a long way toward helping people to continue moving. You may not be going 100 miles an hour like you're used to, but if you're going 35, you're going to go far further than if you're just going 0.
Yes, spot on. Okay, so you're about to give us a little bit more specifics to this structure. Go ahead.
So then here's what I would say. So on your week 1, the A days is military press, row, swing, and the leg raises. So one of those days is going to be light, and then the other one is going to be hard. So, and then the B, so ABA, the B will be medium. So let's say for a light day, you would do, let's say 5 to 7 minutes per couplet. So, or we'll keep it easy. Let's say like 6 to 8 minutes. So this way you get an even number of each. So on the minute, you would do either, let's say 3 to 5 military presses per arm, 3 to 5 bodyweight rows. And you're going to do this on a light day with 6 to 8 minutes. Okay. And likewise with the lower body. Swings, I would say between 5 and 10. Leg lifts between, let's say 3 and 5. You know, just keep it very simple. On the minute, you rest for the remainder of the minute, and that's it. If you need to skip a few minutes in the middle, no hard feelings, right? Yeah. That's your light day. On your hard day, you're going to do closer to, let's say, 14 to 16 minutes. So you're going to double the number of rounds that you would do. Those exact same exercises, military press, row, swing, and then leg lift. On the medium day, B, you're going to have, let's say, 10 minutes, okay? Somewhere right in the middle. And you're going to do push-ups and rows, and then squats and leg lifts, okay? Next week, same thing, but you're going to do BAB. So your B is going to be, again, 6 to 8 minutes.
That'll be light.
Exactly, for the light day, for push-ups and rows. Then 6 to 8 minutes of goblet squat and leg lift. Likewise, your other B day is going to be your hard day. It's going to be 14 to 16 minutes for each couplet. So push-ups and rows, leg lifts and squats. And then your B day is going to be your medium day. We're going to do 10 minutes. It's going to be military press and row and swing plus leg lift.
Brilliant.
So, right there, 2-week cycle. And you could just keep repeating this. And you know, if you write down how many rounds you did, how many total reps you did, the easy way to work your way forward is just say, I'm going to try to do a little bit more on the light and the heavy day, as well as the medium day. And then next week, I'm going to try to do just a little bit more. You can do this for, you know, months on end, really, if you really need to.
Yeah, that is brilliant. That is a 5-star podcast. I'm worried if we do any more, we might go to 6 stars, which is pointless because iTunes only lets you give 5 stars. So
why try harder?
Yeah, so why try harder? No, that's really helpful, Aleks, and I hope that our definitely gentle listeners take that, use that, and get awesome results. We have a bare bones minimalist program there. Kettlebells, calisthenics. You get started with that. I promise you, you're gonna feel pretty spectacular within even just a couple weeks of that. And like even just, yeah, the thing I love about the blend of kettlebells and calisthenics is it just feels good. It makes the body feel good. You feel often like you had a great workout, but you're also sort of restored by those workouts, not just completely crushed for the rest of the day. So I will challenge the gentle listeners to take up your advice here and really put this to good use. It's been super helpful. And for those who want to go further, we need to make sure that we mention your upcoming, soon to be critically acclaimed work. So tell us what's coming down the pipeline, Aleks, what people can expect from it, and where they can snag this beauty as soon as it's available.
Yeah, so it's going to be called the No BS Kettlebell and Bodyweight Kickstart program.
Secrets they don't want you to know.
Exactly. They, quote unquote, don't want you to know. And Pat wrote a most excellent foreword, which you will be able to read as well. It's going to be available on Amazon. So it's going to be Amazon self-published book. I would say it's probably going to be out within the next few weeks. So you can keep your eyes peeled on that. Pat and I will give you some more details on it. But essentially what it's going to do is show you that if you how to really master these basics. Again, the exercises we talked about. There's some other details in there too, actually. There's another calisthenics exercise we did not mention here. That I include in there. There are also some restorative movements through the original strength resets, which also get mentioned. There is going to be a resource center that you'll be able to get access to for free. So you have videos to kind of walk you through the stuff that you're reading about in the book, and there's going to be a program that is attached to it as well. And it's different from the one that I mentioned on here. Something that I think that you're going to like quite a bit and get a lot out of. And I'm very excited about it. This will be my first self-published book. I've been working on it for quite some time.
Not peer-reviewed, not edited.
I'm opposed to all that crap. First of all, I'm good enough with writing. I don't need an edit.
Yo, Aleks is an excellent writer.
Yeah, but I'm totally opposed to peer review, especially for my book. They're not
self-reviewed. That's
exactly
good enough.
Self-reviewed. I reviewed it. I thought it was great. Pat reviewed it. He thought it was great. What more do you need? Like, yeah, seriously. If our opinions are not sacrosanct at this point, just go listen to somebody else's podcast.
Right. So yes, this is coming down the pipeline. It's going to be excellent. It's going to be amazing. It's going to be earth-shattering. It's going to change the world.
And what I would say too is that if you just really can't wait, and you're like, I gotta get started right off the bat.
Gyrating, Aleks, help me.
Yes, exactly. I would grab my 9-minute kettlebell and bodyweight challenge. Just go to 9minutechallenge.com. And as the name implies, it's only 9 minutes long. Very simple movements that are going to help prepare you to improve at stuff like military press and push up and squat and what have you. But there's almost no technique to the exercises in there. They're full body gait pattern type movements. So you can apply them to really any other program, more likely to complement it than to complicate it. So 9minutechallenge.com, if you want to get that. And there you have it. There you be. You'll be set to go.
There you have it. There you be, gentle listeners. Please do like, share, comment, and subscribe to this podcast. Also, head over and check out Aleks's podcast, The Hammercast, where I made a recent appearance. And we will catch all of you guys on the next episode. Goodbye.